Just when you thought A24 couldn't get any more A24-y, A24's all over the place with the film Lamb, which is easily the most A24 film, while also it's sometimes feeling somehow like a parody of an A24 film, whilst also feeling like it's maybe the best A24 film. I just think you can either read it two different ways depending on who you are as an audience member, because this film, for me, is like a masterpiece. It's one of the most insane, amazing, horrific, yet kind of beautifully charming and kind of surreal, yet very naturalistic and grounded. And it's just doing so much whilst also being such a slow burn film that at times is almost doing nothing. But it's doing so much in terms of themes and ideas. But at times, like the actual plot and story is very, very slow. Like, it's a slow burn film. There's like almost no dialogue for the first half of the entire film. It's pretty much a silent film. And there are some really insane, wild kind of images and imagery and kind of insane kind of things that happen. I really don't want to ruin everything. I'm going to do very, very short spoiler-free thoughts. Then I'm going to get into the spoiler stuff, because this film is a film that if you don't know anything about it, don't read the synopsis, don't look at any imagery of the film at all, just go into this movie knowing it is moody, atmospheric, beautifully, gorgeously shot. The whole film is centered on this isolated little remote farm in these Icelandic mountains, and it is really unique in the fact that it might be the only thing shot in Iceland that looks beautiful. They must have found like the one little corner of Iceland that is just impossible not to find a perfect, serene, beautiful shot. Because usually when you go to Iceland, it's kind of a bit like, The cast is good. The story is insane, unique, fascinating. Just, there is so much going on with so little. It's mind-blowing. And the last thing I'm going to say before I get into spoilers, big old spoilers, if you are like 10, 15 minutes into this film and you're like, it looks great, it's moody, it's, I like the feeling, but where is this going? Where is this going? Nothing has happened. No one has said anything. It's just two people wandering around a farm. What is going to happen? Trust me. Trust me. Just keep watching. I seriously can't handle this film. It was so insane. It was just like looking at some shots. I was like, I can't believe this film exists. I can't believe I haven't seen this film. I can't believe this film isn't still being talked about every single day by everybody. Because just, seriously, what the hell is this movie? Hey guys, I'm Mr. Kraken, and this is my spoiler review for the film Lamb. A film that came out 1.5, 2 years ago, and I'm a bit late to the party, I will admit. And usually on my channel, I try not to do heaps of, films that aren't kind of current and recent and all that stuff or whatever. But I just had to check this film out. Someone in my comments, Favreau, he recommended this film, and I was like, and he said, do not check anything out, just put the movie on. So I put the movie on, and at first I'm like, okay, this is pretty interesting. And then by the end, I cannot stress this enough. Favreau, if you are watching, thank you, good, kind sir. What the hell? What an insane movie to recommend. And you are right, this is totally up my alley. I loved every single second of this. It was such a wild, insane, exhilarating, yet somehow very slow-paced movie to experience. It was just, I had so much fun. I literally don't even know where to start. So let's just start with the biggest spoiler. Spoilers, if you're still watching, haven't seen the film, stop, literally. Usually I'd say just keep watching. Who cares? There's not that much to spoil or this or that. This is, you just want to see this fresh. You don't want to, because there's so much kind of build up to the moment. And the moment I'm talking about is the fact that this movie is about a lamb/human hybrid child and two farmers who raise it as their own. And that's it. That's the whole film. It's just that. And it's beautifully simplistic, yet there is so much to this film. So an aspect of this film that I really, really adored was how it was so good and clever at kind of showing, not telling. And I think the two main things it did with this was just with the backstory of the main two characters, our two farmers living on this isolated farm somewhere in the Icelandic mountains, telling their kind of backstory through no dialogue or through very kind of, naturalistic, random dialogue that isn't talking about the thing that happened, but kind of giving you little hints and implications. So at first we get a little random story where he's reading the newspaper and he's all like, oh, apparently time travel could happen theoretically or something. I don't even want to go to the future. I love living now in the present. And you're like, he's trying to be nice, but it feels forced. So like, why are they unhappy? What's going on here? And then the wife, she's like, I think if the time travel was possible, we could also go into the past. And he's like, that makes me sad. Why would you say that? And she's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I'm just thinking about that thing that happened in the past. And obviously none of that is dialogue, but that's the implication. You get it through their faces. And suddenly you're just like, oh hell, what happened? And of course, immediately like probably a child died. And so you kind of sat with that for a bit, but then there's nothing else about it because they don't talk about it. And it just really kind of like, it just sits there simmering. And then of course, when this baby appears, this baby lamb, but they're only showing the head, no one says anything, no one reacts and goes, whoa, look at this lamb with human features. They just look at it and go, oh damn, that's weird. And you're like, why is it weird? Show me the body. Show me the body, movie! And it just does such a good job of like kind of holding off this baby as if it's like a monster in a horror film, like or like that guy at the end of Apocalypse Now, bloody Mr. Godfather himself, where you show a hand, show the teeth, show the claws, show the tail, all these kind of like classic horror kind of reveals where you show little bits of the body. And we get that with this, and at first it kind of plays like this horror movie kind of thing where you see like out of focus kind of limbs moving and you're kind of like, what, that looks human, and I'm presuming it's human just because they're treating it like a human baby. But that's just, your presumptions. You don't really know. And they're treating it kind of scarily. At one point, he picks the body up, and it's just this human, and the body's gotten really big really quickly. And so it's doing so much stuff where you're like, okay, this is like going to be a horror movie. Is this like lamb-human hybrid monster going to like, take over the farm? Is it going to be possessing them using, psychic lamb magical powers? Like, what is going on? I just don't know. And then when the brother comes to the farm and he's just sleeping and you see a shot of it, a big wide shot of it, and it's like, okay, that's a slasher horror movie monster shot, and he's gone, like he's Michael Myers, and you're like, okay. What is going to happen? Is this lamb going to go on a murderous rampage? Like, what is going to happen? And then suddenly the movie just slows right down and stops again and just goes, here is little baby lamb child, and it's just treated like a child, except lamb face. Just a lamb face. It's wearing human clothes. It's walking around. It's got a little human hand. The visual effects are spectacular. I imagine they just got a child and filmed it and then just put the lamb head on, like CGI or sometimes practical, but it just treats it like a child. And it's just like, it's almost just like a child just with a slight deformity of some type. And the brother, he isn't like, whoa, Jesus! Human sheep! What is this? He just kind of looks at it like, what? I'm telling you, in the real world, if I got to someone's house and they're like, here's our son, and it was half a lamb and half a man, I'm telling you, I'm jumping out of my chair. I don't mean to be disrespectful to the lamb. I'm truly not, but it's some pretty wild stuff. I imagine this is either going to be like really, really funny to people, like just the bizarre nature of just the imagery of this, but I found it like kind of charming and cute, but also sometimes the shots would just kind of overwhelm me with just kind of like this absurd feeling of like, I wasn't laughing, but it was just such a wild visual, like just the way, like this film is so absurd and crazy, and it's just so like wildly silly in concept, but it is played so naturalistically, so realistically. It is so low key and slow burn and quiet and just like a drama about a family with a son, but the son just happens to be a lamb, or daughter, sorry. But it's just, I can't even comprehend this film. It's such a wild, insane idea. Everything we need to know about the daughter is told in 4 scenes. 4 scenes, which almost nothing is said about the daughter. I don't even know if they mention the daughter once in the film, but it's all just implied via other things. First is the time travel scene, which I mentioned. The second is a scene where the wife is just at a graveyard and she just does like the cross, and clearly she's mourning somebody, and we see on the little tombstone, it says Ada. And then, we already know they're calling the lamb child Ada. So you're like, oh my God, they've not only embraced this like lamb child thingy as their daughter, they're even calling it's their daughter or their daughter. And it's like heartbreaking and tragic and like a little bit sweet, but it really is just kind of quite sad. And then the next one is this quick flashback, one shot of this gorgeous swampland looking thing. Just, oh my god, Iceland, just like the most beautiful place in the world. Just incredibly stunning, but kind of haunting and awful with like the swampy kind of water. And he just runs at the camera screaming and he falls over, but it's not funny. He gets up, he's running and running, and then he just screams Ada, their daughter. And just from that, you're like, oh my god, she didn't die from some kind of tragic disease or, you know, something like that. She's probably wandered off into the isolated mountains just like while they're asleep, or, you know, just farming, or just, you know, not looking at her for 5 seconds, and she's wandered off into this wasteland, isolated nothingness that they live out in, and died somehow, which is just, I don't know, there's such a feeling of nature, but like in this beautiful way for most of the film. But that one shot just kind of makes you go, oh yeah, no, like when you're isolated and that far out in the middle of nowhere, yeah, if you just wander and you get lost, like you're lost. Like there's no one who's going to be able to find you. And that made me feel really sick. I hate when they make things that are so beautiful and wondrous, like, you know, mountains in, you know, non-human touch places, and make you go, oh, actually scary and bad. Oh, I hate that. Oh, how have you weaponized mountains in Iceland? Such a beautiful thing, and made me go, oh, actually no, they're bad. I guess I'm not booking that trip to Iceland. But of course, just like the time travel one, that is just kind of an implication that you're kind of using your brain or whatever to kind of figure out and kind of guess. And just like the first time travel one, there's a kind of a setup and there's a payoff confirmation with the grave. And this time we get a confirmation with the dad talking to Lambchild character and being like, and he doesn't say anything about his daughter or anything about someone that may or may not have gotten lost at any point. He is just telling the Lambchild, hey, so when we're going away from home, the mountains are behind us. And when we're going back home, the mountains are in front of us, or vice versa, or whatever. And he's like, but what if you get lost, this and that, and what if this and this happens? Follow the river. And he's essentially explaining, hey, if you run off and get lost, here's how you get home, and you'll never be lost, and you can always find your way home. Oh my god, it is the most just low-key conversation. He's not even getting emotional. He's not like getting choked up, reminding himself of why he's telling this story to new child. But oh my god, when I realized what was happening, it just like, I was hit with a wave of emotion of just like sadness and just made me feel so upset. I'm like, the script in this film is so good. There is nothing in this film that isn't good. There's an aspect towards the end that I feel is very 50-50 for people. For me, it blew my mind, but I'll get to that in a second. But for the script and for like the, you know, building blocks of telling the story and the backstory and kind of building up to just before the end, I think it is kind of, I don't know, I'd arguably objectively kind of a perfect script, whether or not you are like vibing what it's doing, because it's doing something very specific. And as I said, super slow burn, which for some people I know is just not gonna grab them, like 15 minutes of just shots of a farm and two sad people wandering around and no one's saying anything. That's gonna really like throw people. And then of course, like the main story and the main just scenes of just seeing them wander around with that child, but the child has like a lamb's head. It's gonna throw people, I imagine, and I'm sure it did, and that's probably why people aren't talking about it all the time. But for me, this just has every single thing that I want from a story and a movie. Like, for me, this is cinema, and I might be, you know, going too hard in the positive because, you know, the last film I saw was Ant-Man 3, which I would argue is maybe everything wrong with cinema. There's almost nothing working for it. Well, some bits, but you know, it's just like seeing that and then just going and sitting down and watching this at home. I was like, oh my god. It's sometimes you kind of need to be reminded of how good movie can be to remind you why you love movies so much. Another aspect of this film that was really interesting, I think maybe more prevalent in the first half of the film, is like the animal acting. And I'm not talking about child lamb character. That is some kind of mix of visuals and practical effects and an actual child with the hand wandering about and all that stuff. I'm talking about like the actual animals, like the child lamb's mother, the dog that's there, the cat, and all just the lambs. The main note in the first 15 minutes I had was just like, oh my lord, like this looks beautiful, and the animals are acting. How did they get the lambs to like act? Like even just simple stuff where a lamb will walk in and fall over and it's like shaking as it's getting sick and it's gonna give birth, and you're like, Like I know what's happening, but it's like a lamb or a goat or a sheep or whatever. I don't know. I don't know my farm animals. I never went and lived on a farm. Like at one point, there's like a wide shot of the barn, and they're all looking out at something that's there. There's some kind of, and later in the film we realize some kind of entity. We'll get to that, and it's like they're acting. The sheep, the lambs, goats, whatever they are, they're acting. I can see in their faces they're acting. How did they do that? Is this some kind of Doolittle situation where they've CGI'd some stuff? Because it really doesn't look like it. At times, like the mum sheep is like goat, lamb, you know what I'm saying? The animal. The ram? Is it? Who knows? Runs up and it's like trying to get into the house to see its baby. And I'm like, I understand what's happening. Like, how did they get them to do that? It's fascinating. But also, maybe, as I said, it's just because, the last film I saw was Ant-Man 3. So my expectations for what acting is just, like, really low right now. So then when the lamb slash sheep slash goat slash ram, whatever they are, were just there, I was like, hey, that's acting! Because, the bar, so very low. Let's talk the end, because the end, in some ways, feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere, but, like, not fully out of nowhere, because, like, at one point, little lamb child character, through their eyes, you see big lamb, Papa Lamb Man. So we get like a little glimpse through the eyeball, but I thought that was kind of a stylistic choice to kind of go, hey, we're not gonna show Papa Ram slash man, goat, animal, human hybrid thingy, Papa adult thing, the hybrid thing, we're not gonna show that because that will look insane and kind of throw the movie because it's been so naturalistic and so grounded. But at the same time, I'm like, how did this happen? Because now you've shown that through the eyeball, it's no longer some kind of weird thing of like, did some like human just like go into their barn and like rape one of the goats? Like, is that just what happened? And this is kind of like a bizarre, beautiful fairy tale horror film based off something they're not really going to explicitly state, but it is implied that just a human just like, went into the barn and did its business, like, with an animal, which is just kind of gross and bizarre. But no, the choice is, it's actually some kind of giant ram, goat, lamb, man situation, and it's just a big human, and it's got big ram things, he appears, and he's like, bang! I've got the gun now. Do you get the metaphor? And whilst on one hand, seeing this CGI creature, monster, ram, man, thingy, whatever, was just utterly delightful, and I generally screamed out loud, and was just like, ah! Ah! Whoa, that's kind of crazy. This like animal hybrid man thingy shot the human, dad and takes the baby because it's its real dad, and like little baby lamb child is like, no, Papa! And he looks up at his real dad going like, I don't like you, you're weird, you're not wearing clothes. I like my human clothes. Oh no. And it's like this really bizarre, surreal moment. But it's like, it doesn't like hit him with its horns and like get up and it's like, animal nature coming to get you. It's like, it's holding a gun. Like, it's holding a rifle. Like the goat man, he didn't like use a handgun like it's kind of a robbery. And where he's like, bang, 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 I've got a handgun. This is some kind of commentary on that kind of thing. It's like, he's got like a rifle, like a hunting rifle kind of thing. And so I'm kind of a bit confused because I'm like, wait, so is this film trying to say that like, these farmers were bad for farming and like utilizing animals and like caging animals and like treating them in whatever way to like make meat or cheese or for the fur like, I don't know, that felt like a bit odd because from everything we've seen of this couple, they love the animals. Like, there are lots of scenes early on, like way too many. Like, I think there's at least 2 or 3, which is literally 2 or 3 too many, of seeing lambs birth out of their mothers. Shots where I was like, ugh, like it was so early in the film where I was still kind of curious as to what the film was about, so I didn't want to miss anything, but I'm still kind of like, trying to like hide the part of the screen where the birthing's happening. I'm just kind of like, this is a weird start to a movie, just lots of lambs being birthed, and like in those scenes though, they're not kind of like hitting the animal, being like, another baby out, another animal for us to utilize for our evil human schemes of, eating the lambs or chopping their wool off and we're nefarious humans. They're like always like, scratching the necks and like feeding the babies and making sure they're all like healthy. Like, these seem like good farmers. I mean, I suppose if you're really extreme on one side, you'd be like, there are no good farmers. If they use animals like this, don't use them or whatever. I'm sure there's that case. But I just feel like, there's a way to present it where it's kind of very like kind of cut and dry with the kind of style. Like, and I'm not saying go extreme, like don't do a chicken run situation or anything like that. It doesn't have to be Okja or whatever. But like, I don't know, like there's no scenes where you're kind of like, oh wow, like these farmers kind of like the brutality of it, where they're just like, they're loving these animals, then they just send them off to die or to the slaughterhouse or this or that. Like I just think that there's ways where you can be kind of naturalistic and subtle without being extreme and over the top. But I don't feel like that was what they were showing at all. These people seem to love animals. I mean, they love animals so much that when this little baby girl appears with a lamb face, they're like, cool. But let's be honest, no matter how much grief you're going through, a lot of us would not be like, oh, cool. You'd be like, what? So I don't know. I just felt like it was a little bit muddy to have like the goat man ram like shoot the farmer with the gun. Is it meant to be like this commentary on like animal cruelty? Because it feels like it must be. It's like seeing an animal with a gun shoot a man and be like, how does humanity like it? Tables have been turned. Ha ha ha. But it's like that doesn't feel like what the film was discussing at all. The film felt like it was about grief and trying to move on and second chances, and I don't know, like yes, there was some stuff with animals to do with it, I guess. But that all feels kind of very surface level and like underneath a lot of it, which I felt like, well, maybe I was misreading it. Maybe I just wasn't looking at the signs. Maybe on a rewatch, I would like see a lot more of that. But for me, it was really focused around this family that happened to be farmers just so they could do this animal hybrid situation. And if anyone has any clarification on what they think the ending means, maybe I'm misreading the gun. Maybe he grabbed the gun off the farmer, like so it just happened to be there. But we never see that. It feels like he was carrying the gun to like you. I don't know. I would love someone to explain the ending and to make me go, It all makes sense now. Because I love the imagery of seeing that and the tragedy and the horror of this kind of family that's been raising this little thing, this crazy little hybrid character thing. And then the dad's like, that's mine. But I'm also like, I have so many questions. Were you born from a man having sex with a sheep? How did this all happen? Are you based on some kind of folktale lore creature that I'm not aware of in Iceland? Is this some kind of Icelandic horror story, fairy tale myth, and it's just brought to life in this film? I don't know. I will Google it. Maybe. Overall, weird film. Very weird film. Absolutely surreal and insane. Absolutely loved it. I would be super curious what people think about this film. And big yays, big nays,